series. Maybe you've seen this in your media center. We have Mitchell's Magical Day with Frank and Ivy Stranahan. We have Mitchell's Magical Day on the New River, and we have Mitchell's Magical Day on South Florida's Atlantic coast. And all of these revolve around the protagonist, the main character, whose name is Mitchell, and his Pop-Up's very special binoculars. The interesting thing about each of these books I spoke about, Mitchell goes in the past and discovers our local history. But today we're going to be reading a book that's a little different. The binoculars are going to take Mitchell someplace not into the past. Let's find out what happens. Our book today is Mitchell's Very Special Red Ribbon Day. And I know many of you are celebrating Red Ribbon Week right now, and that's why I thought you might be interested in this book. I'm going to put on my reading glasses, and off we go. We're going to start here with our book. We open up in Miss Jennings' classroom, and she's calling roll. Thomas Underwood, here. Alex Wade, here. And Brittany Wiley, present, Mrs. Jennings, Brittany replied as she raised her hand. Brittany was never absent. Being absent would ruin her reputation of being teacher's pet. She was line leader, hall monitor, and always took the attendance to the front office. Very well, class, we're all here. Want me to take the attendance now? Brittany asked as she approached Mrs. Jennings' desk. She reached for the tan attendance folder. No, not right now, dear, Mrs. Jennings countered. We have something important to talk about this morning before our fourth grade assembly. Brittany looked a bit surprised as she slowly returned to her seat. Ha, Miss Big Shot, Billy teased as she plopped into her desk. Oh, you be quiet. Now, eyes up here, Miss Jennings directed as she patted the shoulders of her dress. Today starts something very important indeed. Does anyone know what that might be? Her eyes floated across the room from one student to the next. Mitchell scanned the room too, looking for clues. The bulletin board in the hallway was covered with colorful fall leaves. I wonder if it's autumn, he whispered to Billy, who sat in the next row. Might be the start of autumn. Is it autumn, Mrs. Jennings? Billy blurted out. No, Billy. Autumn began in September. Now that we're here in October, we need to recognize a very special week. In fact, the color of my dress might give you a hint, she replied with a smile as she patted her bright red dress. Too early for Christmas, Mitchell muttered to Billy. Kind of looks like a red Christmas dress. Billy decided not to blurt that out. Don't you know, Brittany? I thought you knew everything, Billy sighed. Oh, just be quiet, Brittany hissed. Well, students, today is the beginning of Red Ribbon Week. That's why I wore this red dress. From October 23rd to October 31st each year, Red Ribbon Week helps us remember the importance of being drug-free. Our Say No to Drugs assembly this morning will teach us more about it. In the meantime, I have something I'd like you to read for homework tonight. Please share it with your parents. Mrs. Jennings passed a stack of papers to the first students in the row. This explains the history and reasons why we celebrate Red Ribbon Week, how it all began. Be prepared to discuss it tomorrow in reading group, she continued as the papers fluttered back from one student to the next. To prepare us for today's Say No to Drugs assembly, I have a bright red ribbon for each of you to wear. Brittany, would you make certain that everyone receives a red ribbon? She handed the bundle to Brittany, who passed them out as though she were a banker counting money. There's Mrs. Jennings with Brittany, and she has the red ribbons in her hand. Now, my books, although the cover is color, inside the images are black and white, so the ribbons don't look like they're red, do they? But they are. Mitchell pinned the red ribbon onto his shirt and stuffed the reading paper into his book bag next to his peanut butter and jelly sandwich and his math workbook. He folded the flap over and shoved the bag under his seat. It was 8:20 in the morning, and the assembly was going to start in a few minutes. Psst! Hey, Mitch! Psst! Billy called to Mitchell. Hey, are you going to go to the football game tonight? Huh? Mitch replied as he looked at the clock. It seemed the second hand was moving so slowly. The football game tonight at the high school. My brother's playing, and so is Brittany's brother, Jeff. Are you coming? Yeah, I think I can. What time? Well, the game starts at 7, but I want to get there early. I'll come by your house so we can ride our bikes together. Suddenly, their attention was drawn back to class as Mrs. Jennings instructed the students to form a line for the assembly. Of course, Brittany was at the head of the line, holding the front door. "Remember, I'll be at your house before 7, Billy cut in, and then he tousled Mitch's hair a little bit. When the dismissal bell finally rang that afternoon, Mitch was ready with one foot out the door. It had been a very full and exhausting day. Recess had been canceled due to Red Ribbon Week, so he wound up full of energy. He threw his book bag over one shoulder and raced to the bike rack. His legs seemed to have so much strength as they pumped the pedals. "I have reading and math and football tonight," he said to himself as he rode down the street. He rolled into the garage and bounced through the side door of his house. Hey, Mom," he panted. His book bag fell onto the kitchen table. "Goodness," she replied, "you're out of breath. Slow down. Have a glass of juice and tell me, how was school today? Anything exciting?" "Well," Mitch panted, "we had a red ribbon assembly." He reached into his bag and pulled out the paper Mrs. Jennings had given to each of the students. "I'm supposed to read this tonight with you." "Okay, let's have a look. You want to read it now before I start supper?" "Sure," Mitch replied. "Oh, and Mom, can I go to the football game tonight with Billy? His brother's playing. Receiver, I think. The game starts at 7, but Billy's coming a little early." "I really want to go." "Well, make certain that your homework and all your chores are finished before supper and you're free to go. Let's start with this reading. Why don't you read to me while I get a few things together?" "Okay," Mitch replied as he took out his paper and began to read. The title was, "What is Red Ribbon Week?" He paused. Red Ribbon Week started when illegal drug traffickers in Mexico City killed a drug enforcement agent in 1985. The man's name was Enrique, but he was known to his friends as Kiki. He was close to uncovering the identities of members of a drug smuggling ring in Mexico when he was kidnapped and tortured and killed. Mitch stopped, drew a breath, and continued slowly. Outraged by Kiki's death and by the devastating effects caused by drug abuse, Kiki's friend in his hometown in California began to wear red ribbons to honor and remember their friend. Soon, other communities joined in, and Red Ribbon became a symbol of a commitment to living drug-free. Today, the Red Ribbon is a symbol for drug and alcohol prevention in cities and towns all across the United States. Each year, from October 23rd through October 31st, millions of children and adults will wear red ribbons as a pledge to be drug-free and to fight the abuse of drugs. Mitch paused to catch his breath. "Hey, Mom, why do people do drugs if they know they're illegal and can hurt them?" Mitch's mother stopped chopping the celery and placed the knife on the cutting board. "I guess there are lots of reasons. Some people think drugs make them look cool or more grown up. Some people are insecure and think drugs might make things better for them. And I guess a lot of people do drugs because their friends pressure them into it. There are plenty of reasons, but I can't think of one good reason. That I know for sure." "What do you think, Mitch?" she asked. "Why do kids your age want to smoke or drink or do drugs?" Mitch turned his eyes upward as he thought. To be cool, I think that's the biggest reason, to fit in," he said. "Some kids have a hard time fitting in, so they try different ways. I guess that's why." "Yeah, I think you're right, Mitch," his mother said as she wrapped her arms around him and gave him a squeeze. "Now you remember, you fit right here with us because we love you, and we don't want anything to happen to you." She squeezed a little harder, and Mitch started to lose his breath. Suddenly she stopped and held both of his arms tightly. She shook him a little. "Has anyone offered you drugs, Mitchell? Cigarettes or anything?" Her face was tense. "Have they, Mitch? Tell me." No, Mitch replied. "Not yet." "Not yet? What do you mean, not yet?" I know. It's bound to happen sooner or later," she said, "but I just get so worried. I mean, what would you do if someone did try to offer you something like that?" She looked deep into Mitchell's eyes. "I know what to do," Mitch chirped. "We learned it in our 4th grade assembly today. First, you have to look that person straight in the eyes. That way they know you mean business. Then you say no very firmly. No. You don't have to shout it or scream it. You just say no in a firm voice. Next, you give the person a reason, like, "I don't want to lose my place on the football team," or "I don't want to disappoint my parents," or "My little brother looks up to me and I want to be a good role model." Then you walk away. Mrs. Jennings told us that you have to walk away and tell a trusted adult what happened. I learned those steps. Look them in the eye, say no firmly, give them a reason, walk away, tell a trusted adult. So that's what I do. Well, that makes me feel better, his mother said. I'm glad you learned from your red ribbon assembly today. And you can always come to me or your pop-up or Mrs. Jennings if somebody tries to pressure you. Sure, Mom, I know that. Now, can I go get some stuff ready for the game tonight? Billy will be here right after supper. Yeah, of course, dear, his mother replied as she sliced up some bright red tomatoes. Remember to wash up before you come to the dinner table. Mitch dashed from the kitchen, through the dining room, and into the family room where Pop-Up was reading a magazine. And here's a little picture of Pop-Up and Mitchell. You can see all the pictures in my book are pretty simple drawings. His stocking feet were up on the ottoman, and he had a glass of iced tea on the table beside him. Hey there, Mitch, my boy, he exclaimed. How are you doing? I'm okay, Mitch replied as he gave Pop-Up a big bear hug. What you reading? Well, I was just reading an interesting article about cigarettes and vaping. Vaping is kind of like cigarettes. Is that a good thing? Are they better for you? Is vaping good? No, not really. Mitchell looked puzzled. You see, the smoke that comes from the end of a burning cigarette or a vape machine is secondhand smoke, and it can be very dangerous. In fact, this article states that more than 50,000 people who are not smokers die each year from secondhand smoke. I guess those new vape cigarettes, people think they're safe, but they're really not. It would be much better if people could stop smoking altogether. Then why don't they? Mitch asked. It's not that easy, Pop-Up said. See, tobacco contains nicotine, and some of those vaping cigarettes that don't use tobacco use nicotine. Once a person starts smoking nicotine, they feel a desire to use it more and more and more because it's addictive. And it's not just nicotine. There's lots of other chemicals in both cigarettes and vapes. Yeah, like rat poison. We learned today that the same chemical that they use to kill rats is found in cigarettes, Mitch exclaimed. That's true, Pop-Up said. There are 4,000 known chemicals in a cigarette, and many of them are known to cause cancer. But in spite of the dangers, people have a hard time quitting because of the nicotine. They try and they fail, and they try and they fail. It's really tough. Nicotine forms a strong addiction, whether it's from cigarettes or vape machines. Kids your age who think they're playing around with something safe, they're really fooling themselves. But Pop-Up, didn't you used to smoke a pipe? I remember that. I sure did, and I smoked it for a long time. But one day, I went to my doctor for a checkup, and he scared me. He found some unhealthy tissue in my mouth and throat and thought it was cancer. Luckily, he caught it in time, but I said right then and there in that doctor's office I would never use a tobacco product again, and I haven't. It wasn't easy, but I kicked the habit. Pop-Up held Mitchell's hand. You see, Mitch, when I was your age, no one told us how dangerous cigarettes and tobacco were. Some advertisements actually told us it was good for us. Some sports figures would say they got positive effects from using tobacco. No one told us that we could get cancer or lose our teeth or get gum infections, or that our lungs could fill with fluids and tar, make us very sick. In fact, some of my friends paid a very high price for not knowing. Some of them died much too young. I won't pick it up again, Pop-Up said. Mitch listened carefully. By the way, Pop-Up continued, what's that ribbon you're wearing on your shirt? Is that a prize of some kind? It's Red Ribbon Week, Mitch replied proudly. Everyone's wearing these ribbons to show our pledge to be drug-free. We had an assembly at school today. He tugged at the ribbon. You know something, Pop-Up? I think I should give my red ribbon to you because you beat tobacco. Mitch unfastened the pin and handed the ribbon to Pop-Up. Thanks, Mitch, Pop-Up said. It makes me feel great. But I made my decision to say no to tobacco and drugs many years ago, and I'm sticking to it. Why don't you hang on to this ribbon? I'll bet there's somebody who might need it more than I do. Pop-Up pinned the ribbon back onto Mitchell's shirt. Now, what's this I hear about the football game tonight? He said. Oh, right. Tonight at 7 at the high school, Billy's brother Rob is playing, and so is Brittany's brother Jeff. This is their first varsity high school game. Say, why don't you take my binoculars with you? That way you'll get a great view of the game from any seat. Pop-Up reached into a small wooden chest beside his chair and rummaged around. Here they are. He pulled out a black case Treat them with care, he said. I got these a long time ago when I was your age. If you look carefully, you'll see things no one else can see. The leather case was very worn and very dry. Mitch slowly opened the lid, and inside he saw faded black binoculars. The paint was worn on the edges, and the brass was showing through. Pop-Pop said, "Look closely. You'll be surprised by what you might see." Well, Billy and Mitch went to the game. They locked their bikes to the chain-link fence that ran around the perimeter of the field and found seats very high up in the bleachers. The stadium was humming with activity and energy. There were families and groups of high school kids and a man selling sodas and hot dogs, the sounds of the marching band as they warmed up for the opening. Mitch looked around to see if he recognized anyone from his class. He took Pop-Up's binoculars and held them to his eyes. "Oh yeah, this is much better," he said. He looked into the field, toward both goalposts, and then into the opposite stands. He scanned back into the crowd where he and Billy sat. "Hey, look down there," he said. "Look, there's Brittany with her dad, and I see Coach Keith." "Hey, Mitchell, I'm going to go to the snack bar before kickoff. You want anything? You want to split a box of popcorn? My folks gave me a few dollars." Billy reached into the pocket of his jeans and pulled out 5 $1 bills, carefully folded and held together with a paperclip. "Sure, I'll chip in." Mitch handed Billy a crumpled wad of bills topped with a sprinkle of coins. It looked like a money sundae. "Soda, popcorn, and candy if we have enough money," he said. "Coming with me?" Billy asked as he arranged the money neatly on the metal seat. "Nah, you go on. I'm going to keep looking for kids from school." As Billy scampered down the bleachers and around the corner, Mitch peered again through the binoculars. He scanned the crowd. "Oh, look down there," he giggled. "It's Billy." He watched Billy count the money while he waited in line at the snack bar. Mitch followed the path along the sidewalk as it wound around toward the school parking lot, past a clump of trees and near the locker room. "Hey, there's Brittany's brother Jeff and Billy's brother Rob. They must be reviewing their plays." Here are those high school football players. Mitch watched as the two players made gestures with their arms and hands, which Mitch tried to interpret. Jeff then raised a cigarette to his mouth and drew in deeply and blew out a cloud of gray smoke. "What? What's he doing? Jeff smokes? Brittany's brother smokes?" Mitch said to no one but himself. He tried to listen to their conversation as he stared at them through the binoculars. "You know, you should put that out," Rob said. "If Coach catches you, you're kicked off the team. Why are you smoking before the game anyway?" "It gives me a little pick-me-up, man, a little extra kick, a little energy. Besides, who will know?" Jeff said. "I'll know. And by the way you smell like an ashtray, everyone will know," Rob stated as Jeff took another puff on his cigarette. "Besides, what if your dad found out? What about your little sister? You want Brittany to start smoking? She looks up to you. What about that?" Yeah, I know, but I can keep it a secret. I can be cool about it. And besides, I can quit any time I want." "Oh, sure you can. Sure, just like everybody else who's hooked on cigarettes. So just quit then," Rob said. Rob watched as Jeff finished off the cigarette and buried the butt in the sand. He then popped a piece of gum into his mouth to cover the smell of the cigarettes. "I'm telling you," Rob said, "quit now." Slowly, the scene through the binoculars grew fuzzy, out of focus. Mitch couldn't see anything clearly. The sound of the marching band blurred into an announcer's voice. "And again, the home team has done it. They're state champions." What's going on, Mitch wondered. They didn't even play the game yet. He tried to readjust the binoculars, turning the focus knob one way and then the other. A huge crowd came into view, gathering at the locker room. The players and fans were giving each other high fives. Mitch kept looking through the binoculars, trying to focus as the image changed. He spotted Rob again in the middle of the group. He was older, bigger, more grown up. "Hey, Rob, great game," said a player who Mitch didn't recognize. "I guess you're ready to go off to state college now." "Yeah, thanks, I'm ready," Rob replied. "They gave me a full scholarship all 4 years because of my football playing." "Well, you play a good game." "Yeah, and my grades. I carried a high average all the way through. I did a lot of studying, but now that I'm graduating, it all paid off." Rob shook the player's hand and headed toward the locker room. Then he saw Jeff. Hey, Jeff, where have you been hiding? I haven't seen you around much. You've been cutting class a lot, huh? Jeff looked down at his feet. Yeah, I guess. School's a drag. Boring. He kicked the grass with the toe of his shoe. Besides, I have better things to do. I have a job at the grocery store. Well, I had a job there. They fired me this week. I kept coming in late, but that's cool. I'll get another job. I don't need them. What are your plans after this year? I mean, this is it. We're seniors in high school. We're going to state college. I'm going to study biology. What about you? Any plans for you going to college? Rob asked with interest. Nah, no way, man. I mean, who needs more school? Besides, I'm going to make money to fix up my car. You could have stuck with our team. You were good. Remember that first game we played back when we were in ninth grade? We were a good team. You could have had a scholarship to go to state college too, if it wasn't for these. Rob reached in to Jeff's pocket and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. These did you in. Once coach caught you, he kicked you off the team. But then he gave you another chance and you blew it. Yeah, I guess I did, but that's in the past. Nothing I can do now, Jeff said. Sure there is, Rob said. Quit smoking. Get back on track. Make some good decisions for a change. Hey, why don't you come with us? A bunch of us are going over to Coach Keith's house. He's having a cookout to celebrate our big win. Come on, Rob motioned with a tilt of his head. Nah, I'm just going to hang out, man. Why don't you hang with me? I got a cooler with a 6-pack of cold beer in the trunk of my car. Come on, man, one for old time's sake. What? Rob said. You have beer in your car? No way. Come on, Jeff sighed. What's the matter? Is the big famous football player chicken? Afraid of being a man? No, Rob looked Jeff squarely in the eyes. I'm not about to throw away all these years of hard work and my whole future for a can of beer. He turned and walked away. Come on, you big baby, Jeff yelled. One beer, like it's going to kill you. Rob went through the doors, and he never looked back. Hey, Mitch, hey, grab your soda before it falls. Billy appeared near the seats. Mitch, grab it, come on. Mitch turned quickly and was startled to see Billy hovering over his head with a box filled with sodas and popcorn. Let me see if I can get that picture for you here. Move it in a little closer. There you go. Mitch is sitting down. Billy's got the popcorn. Mitch reached up for a cup that was about to fall. Boy, there was a big line down there, Billy said. The game's about to start now. Billy sighed as he sat down and popped a straw through the lid of his drink. I hope my brother does well today. Mitchell looked around him in confusion. He rubbed his eyes and tried to focus on what Billy was saying. Yeah, sure, he'll do well, Mitch replied as he rested the binoculars on his lap. After all, he's going to state on a scholarship. But not Jeff. He made some very bad choices. He's going where? What are you talking about? Billy said. I heard them talking, Mitch replied. He stopped in mid-sentence. How could he tell Billy what he had seen and heard through Pop-Pop's binoculars? How could he explain that he had actually had a look into the future? Well, I mean, I heard that Rob, Mitch stammered, he's a good player. He's good, that's all. That's what I meant to say. And Mitch, maybe Jeff won't play so good today. Let's hope they both play good, Billy continued as he crunched on some popcorn. Mitch took a giant gulp of soda and said nothing. By halftime, the score was 17-7. Rob and Jeff's team was in the lead. The marching band took to the field and filled the stadium with lively music. Billy had spotted his Aunt Janet and Uncle Wayne a few rows away, and he went off to talk to them. Mitch took one last slurpy sip through the straw of his soda, which was mostly air, and went to the very, very top of the bleachers. Below, people were scattered like ants at a picnic. I wonder if Mrs. Jennings is here anywhere, he thought as he raised the binoculars to his eyes. He searched the sidewalk and the benches for her. And then the highway in the distance caught his attention. The streetlights shone brightly through the clear night, but the focus became blurred. The image was fuzzy. You know what's going to happen, don't you? Yikes, here we go again, Mitch yelped. He kept a keen eye through the lenses as things slowly changed. On the main road leading to the highway, there appeared a blaze of flashing lights and sirens. A car had rammed a light pole at high speed. The front end was torn and twisted into a braid of metal. The light pole had fallen onto the car, collapsing the roof and shattering the windows. 3 firemen struggled desperately to pull the driver from the wreckage. The doors would not open. Mitch looked intently, trying to see the driver as the firemen worked. He squinted one eye and then the other. Who could it be, he wondered. Who could be in this accident? Whoops, I got the wrong picture, didn't I? There we go. There's Mitch at the top of the stands, looking to see who has been in this terrible car accident. Any idea? Suddenly it was clear. It was Jeff, Brittany's brother. As the workers placed Jeff's battered body onto a stretcher, an empty beer can fell from the car and rolled toward a fireman's boots. The fireman picked it up and handed it to a police officer. Here's another one, he said. Another kid drinking. Jeff's stretcher was placed in the back of an ambulance, which screamed away into the night. A wrecker lifted the mangled car as the emergency workers swept up the broken glass and twisted metal. There's a few more empty beer cans in that car, too, the fireman continued. How old was this kid? Did we find any ID on him? 17. He's Marcus Wiley's boy, the fireman answered. He used to play on the high school team in his freshman year. He had potential, too. What are his chances now? How serious are his injuries? Well, he's banged up pretty good. He's got some internal damage. They'll know more at the hospital. I guess it's a good thing he was alone. I guess it's good he didn't hit anybody else. Sure, good thing. The officer sighed as the wrecker slipped down the street in a flash of yellow lights. Mitchell let the binoculars move away from his eyes. Jeff's really done it now, he sighed. What will his parents do? What will Brittany do? His eyes began to fill with tears. What will happen to him, he wondered. And suddenly an interruption. Mitchell, come on. The second half is starting, and I found some better seats near the 50-yard line. Come on, hurry before somebody else grabs them. Billy was yelling from the landing. Yo, Mitch! Mitch, can you hear me? Mitch turned toward Billy in surprise. He wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his shirt and raced to the bottom of the bleachers. Hey, Mitch, are you okay? Your eyes are all red. Have you been crying? Oh, no, I'm going to be okay, Mitch replied in a broken voice. I was just thinking about the accident, and I'm really worried. What accident? Billy asked. The accident. Mitch stammered. Billy would never believe that Mitch saw Jeff in a wreck through Pop-Pop's binoculars. Should he try to tell Billy what he was seeing? He looked down at the binoculars. I accidentally got something in my eye, he said. Some dirt, I guess, by accident. That's why they're red. My eyes are red from that. I got dirt in my eye by accident. Oh, okay, Billy said. Well, you seem to be acting kind of weird. Billy rolled his eyes. Come on, let's hurry. Let's get to those seats. The boys scrambled across the bleachers and headed toward the prize seats Billy had spotted. Soon the second half of the game rose to a high pitch. Mitchell used Billy's binoculars to get a better view of the action. All the while he kept thinking about the bad decisions Jeff had made and the trouble he was in. Mitch wondered how he could prevent it. There's the snap, the announcer called. Mitch followed the path of the ball as it sailed across the field and into the arms of Jeff Wiley. Go Wiley, the crowd cheered as Jeff raced toward the goalposts. Mitch followed Jeff's path all the way down the field through the binoculars. The 30, the 20, the 10, the announcer barked. Touchdown! Jeff Wiley has scored again. The bleachers rumbled with cheers and applause. Jeff Wiley's first time on the field, and he's really shown his stuff today, the announcer said. Mitch watched through the lenses as Jeff was greeted by members of his team in the end zone. But then the images began to shift again. Uh-oh, Mitch gasped. What now? He watched as the players slowly disappeared from view. The image became blurred. Soon only Jeff's dad and Coach Keith were on the field. It was all calm and quiet. Sorry to hear about your boy, Mr. Wiley. I can only imagine what it's like, Coach said as he patted Mr. Wiley on the shoulder. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, I appreciate that. I just don't know where we went wrong. where I went wrong. I mean, here he was, a star athlete on the field not that long ago, and then this. He threw it all away. Mr. Wiley stared off into the distance. We thought he'd wise up after that terrible car accident. Maybe that would shake sense into him. He nearly lost his life in that one. The state took his driver's license away. He spent 2 months in a drug treatment facility. He lost his job, his car. That should have been a very powerful lesson to him. We were so thankful he got another chance, but he didn't come around. What could we have done? What should I have done? Mr. Wiley shook his head. Maybe I was working too late, or maybe I didn't pay enough attention to him. His voice trailed off. Don't beat yourself up. There's still hope for him, the coach replied. But jail. My son is in jail for 4 years. How in the world did he wind up there? Pot. They found marijuana in the pockets of his coat and in his bedroom. They say he's been dealing it right out of our house, right in our neighborhood. I had no idea. None. What's the future for him now? Hometown football hero sells drugs on hometown streets? He'll get help in the county facility. Maybe they can straighten him out this time. You know, when he was a freshman on your team, he started smoking cigarettes. He started making bad choices back then, started losing sight of his goals. Eventually, you threw him off the team, but I turned my back. I thought a few cigarettes couldn't make a big difference. I didn't want to fight with him over it. I should have done something then. I should have talked to him about it. Mr. Wiley buried his face in his hands. I wish he had come to me then. But then, another interruption. Billy tugged at Mitch's sleeves. Come on, let's go. Jeff's autographing programs. I want to get him to sign mine. Hurry up before the line gets too long. Autographs? Programs, Mitchell said. He looked around as though he had just come out of a fog. Have you seen Jeff's dad? He was pretty upset. Maybe we should say something to him. Upset? What, are you kidding? Jeff just scored the winning touchdown. Why would he be upset about that? Billy asked. Well, you know, Mitch looked around at the crowd. Oh, never mind. He said he could never explain this to Billy, and how the binoculars changed his view. Let's get in line. Mitchell and Billy clambered across the field and made their way through the crowd. On the far end, the team was signing shirts and programs for fans. Jeff was standing next to his father. Billy and Mitchell inched closer to the team. Rob! Hey, Rob! Billy called. Over here. Rob bounced up and down, waving his arms. Rob! Rob looked up and saw 2 very familiar faces in the crowd. He nudged Jeff and motioned toward the boys. Well, look who we have here, Jeff exclaimed. What are you 2 rascals doing out this late on a school night? He smiled and took off his helmet and squinted under the stadium lights. So what do you think? How'd we do our first game? He tapped on Billy's chest. You guys were great. Man, you really brought the ball home in the 4th quarter, Jeff, Billy exclaimed. Yeah, boys, I think we found our star receiver, Jeff's father chimed in. My son has a lot of potential and a bright future. And here's a picture of, Jeff and his dad. Hey, Mitch, what's that on your shirt? Jeff asked as he pointed to the red ribbon. Oh, this? Gosh, I forgot I still had it on. We got these red ribbons in school today, Mitch answered as he tilted his head downward to look at his ribbon. Today is the first day of Red Ribbon Week. We wear these to show our pledge to stay drug-free. Well, that's fine, Mitch, Mr. Wiley nodded. A fine goal for all of us. Isn't that right, Jeff? Yes, Mitch continued. We pledge to say no to tobacco, to alcohol, and all harmful drugs. Not just for this week, but for good. Forever, right, Billy? Right, Mitch, Billy nodded. Mitch looked down at his red ribbon again. He thought about all the things he had seen through the binoculars. He knew the decision that Jeff was making about tobacco and alcohol and drugs that were going to ruin his life. Mitch recalled what Pop-Up had said earlier. Do you remember what Pop-Up said? You might find someone who needs that red ribbon more than I do. Slowly, Mitchell unfastened the brass pin and slid it from his shirt. Here, Jeff, I want you to have this. I want you to wear the red ribbon. There's Jeff and Mitchell. Well, okay, thanks, I guess. Why are you giving it to me, Jeff said. Mitch paused for a moment. Well, I've been thinking. he said. "You're under a lot of pressure, with school and the team and all, and after this game, everyone is really going to look up to you. You're like a hero, a role model to all us younger kids, so I thought you might need this little red ribbon to remind you to stay drug-free." Mitch handed Jeff the red ribbon. "Here, I want you to have it." Jeff looked at the red ribbon in his hand. He thought about the cigarette he had smoked right before the game. He thought about how disappointed Coach Keith would be, how upset his dad would be. Just then Brittany appeared through the crowd of people. She too was wearing her red ribbon. "Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Mitch," Jeff said as he shook Mitchell's hand. "I'll remember." He turned and gave Brittany a big hug. "I'll remember to say no to drugs and alcohol for me and all the people I care about. Right, sis? We're going to stay drug-free." Brittany smiled in agreement. "Thanks, Mitch. It's almost as though you knew I needed this red ribbon today," Jeff said with a wink. "Hey, Mitch," Billy whispered as they walked toward the exit gate. "Just why did you give Jeff your red ribbon anyway? What made you think he needed a red ribbon?" "Just a hunch," Mitch replied as he held on to his binoculars. "Just a special hunch," he smiled. "Hey, race you to the gate," he screamed. "You're on." Billy snapped back and the two friends ran across the field. That's the end of our story, but now I'd like to do some questions and answers that appear in the book. And maybe this will help you with some questions you might have. Should we say no to all drugs? What about drugs like aspirin and cough syrup or medicine that the doctor or my mother gives me? Well, that's a good question. A drug is a substance other than food that we take into our bodies to make our bodies feel or act differently, sometimes to heal ourselves. Some drugs can be very helpful. Doctors might prescribe a drug for us to take when we are sick or if we've hurt ourselves. These drugs could also fight disease and infection and allow our bodies to heal faster. Your doctor writes a very special prescription for these medicines. A prescription is a note that states your doctor is authorized to give you a certain type of drug for a certain length of time for a particular reason. Your doctor will provide very clear instructions when and how to properly take the medicine. Other helpful drugs may be found in a drugstore. These are called over-the-counter drugs because they do not require a doctor's note. These can include aspirin or cough syrup. Each package has directions that must be read and followed very carefully so that the proper amount of medicine is taken. Both prescription and over-the-counter medicines have to be handled responsibly. If they are misused, they can harm us instead of helping us. All medicine must be used with an adult. We don't take them by ourselves if we're young. Here's another question. My father smokes and I hope he quits soon. He's been smoking a long time and I think he's addicted. Now he's using vape. He wants to quit that too, but he says he can't. Is there anything I can do to help him? Well, it's great to care about your parents. I'm sure the father would be very proud of that. But you know from the Red Ribbon Assembly that nicotine is one of the most powerful and most addictive substances. If your father's been smoking a long time or has been using vape, his addiction to nicotine is probably very strong, and that's difficult to give up. One thing that never helps is nagging. Just think how you would feel when you're nagged to do your homework or clean your room or do your chores. Does nagging make you feel any better about something you have to do? No, of course not. Nagging can often make the problem worse. It could make your father feel as though his efforts to quit are hopeless. Instead of nagging and pestering, have a talk with your dad. Tell him how much you care about him. Share with him some of the information that you know. Let him know that you understand it's very hard to give up smoking or even vaping. And congratulate him for trying. You might want to write your father a letter reminding him how much he means to you. You don't have to mention he has to quit smoking. He'll get the message. When you get your school pictures, give your dad a small one and ask him to place it near his cigarette pack or with his vape. Each time he reaches for it, he'll see that picture and be remembered that you care about him. Well, I think that's it for today. There's an awful lot of information about drug abuse, Red Ribbon Week, alcohol use, tobacco prevention on the internet. And I bet your teacher has a lot of information too. But I think you have the information. You know what's right. You know how to say no. If somebody pressures you to do something, what do? You look them in the eye. You don't look away, because that makes it look like you're really not sure about what you want to do. Look them straight in the eye. Say no firmly. You don't have to scream or yell. Give them a reason why you personally will not make this decision about tobacco or drugs or alcohol. Maybe you are proud of your grades. Maybe you want to be a role model. Maybe you don't want to embarrass your football coach or your church minister or your parents. Think of a reason and be prepared to give that reason. And then walk away. Don't stay with these people. You know, if you say no, but you keep hanging out with people who are trying to get you to do bad things, you might eventually do them. You got to get out of that situation. Walk away. Go to a trusted adult. Go to your teacher, your parents, whoever it is that you trust, that you can say, look, something happened today and I want to talk about it. And that will help a long way keeping you drug-free. It'll also keep you out of trouble. You know, if somebody wants you to steal or cheat, or maybe cheat on a test, or take something out of the teacher's drawer, or maybe something from your parents, or a friend that doesn't belong to you, if you remember those things, if somebody's pressuring you to do something that you know is wrong, you look them in the eye squarely. You say no, you give your reason, you get away, and then you talk about it with a trusted adult. And I'm going to tell you, we adults also have to do these things. Peer pressure isn't just for kids. All the time, adults are pressured to do things too, and we have to be strong and know what is right and what is wrong. I'm glad you joined me today for this reading of this book, and you know, all of my books are read aloud, and your teacher can help you find them too. Have a good day, stay safe, stay drug-free. See ya.